Hi everyone, Jay here from Jay Productions, back with another video where we're just going to have a little bit of an informal chat. And we're going to do this about the new Sons of Behamat. Behamat, yeah. So we're going to be talking about them in detail with what Games Workshop has been shown off and just address a few things that have, been popped up to me that I've thought about and a few people have asked me curiously about it. Because a few of these questions have come up about what I think about these guys now that we've seen a few of their rules, simply because, well, as a general rule, anyone who knows me knows I hate Knights, Imperial Knights from Warhammer 40k. I think they were okay in 7th and the early parts of 8th edition, and then their codex came out and they ruined 40k. They absolutely ruined 40k, and I absolutely hate them. I hate Imperial Knights in many, many facets for many, many reasons. I've gone to tournaments, the last 3 tournaments that I fought in 8th edition. There was nothing but Knight players. All the top competitive spots were nothing but Knight players with some kind of soup. Some of them were just pure Knight players. It was bloody ridiculous. It was pretty much, I'm playing 40k and they're playing Adeptus Titanicus, and I hate that as well from a lore perspective. Knights were everywhere, and they're absolutely bullshit rules that basically allow them to counter for every sort of flaw in their army. So, I don't like Imperial Knights. And the concern was, and it's quite rightly so when these were showing us, are the Mage-Gargants going to be the Imperial Knights of Age of Sigmar? And the answer, I'm pretty sure, is no. Now, before we delve into what it is Games Workshop has shown off from us, I want to make 2 things apparently clear. And it's about Age of Sigmar's balance in terms of, comparing apples and oranges here. But go with me. In 40k, the Imperial Knights have invulnerable saves. There's an emphasis on shooting. They shoot ridiculously well. They have massive damage attacks, or they have huge numbers of attacks that deal solid damage. They have ridiculous amounts of AP. They have good wounds, and high armor saves. And they have to be focused down. Age of Sigmar. You have no invulnerable saves. You're really lucky if any monster has a 3+ armor save. You have ignoring damage, though, which is sort of like an invulnerable save. But it's typically a little less effective in this. So, as a general rule, monsters in Age of Sigmar are typically, they have a okay wounds count, and then a 4-up save. And as a single model entity, they tend to fall over and die pretty quickly. Monsters in Age of Sigmar have that tendency of not performing very well. They're typically outperformed by most hordes. Most hordes will chew through them like crazy, just because monsters don't have the sheer number of attacks. Now, if they keep the Gargants, if they didn't show off the rules, and the rules that I've seen so far from Games Workshop having shown them, the army would be a joke and no one would ever play them. They would kind of just be that disappointing army of, oh yeah, they've got a few gimmicks and they're very cool, but for their points cost, they just kind of roll over flat and die. And now there are some monsters that do have their points cost that do that, and they're very disappointing and no one uses them at all. And such units tend to be the Golotkin, which I know is technically a character, but it's sort of a monster. The Star Drakes from the Storecast Eternals, really not good for their points cost. And then you have some of the gods as well. Some of the god class monsters, they're very good, but they will die to a horde, and a horde is more efficient. So, for their points cost. So, let's look at what they've given them. So when I first saw the stat line, at first I was like, But then after thinking about it for a while, and looking at what Games Workshop have done here, I came to a conclusion that it's okay. And I'm not too concerned at this juncture when I first look at this. So, when we look at the Mage-Gargants, Games Workshop has thrown up their first article. Their first article was showing us the kits a little bit and talking about their lore. The second article is looking at their stats. So, they have 7 bravery. A little higher than I expected, quite honestly, especially for a destruction army. But, they're single model units, so they're not going to get a lot of bravery buffs. So 7 is fine. They're also not going to run away, because again, they're single models. The bravery 7 really matters for factions that rely on bravery for dealing mortal wounds. I can particularly think of Nighthaunt and Flesh Eater Courts, particularly. So there's that. They have a 4+ save. That's to be expected. So I honestly did not expect them to have anything less than a 4+ save. The problem is, if they have something that's like a 3+ save and shit tons of wounds, but then have a shit ton of attacks. See, a 4+ save is fine. And then, of course, if you limit that, if they only have maybe a 5 or a 6+ to ignore damage, then you're looking okay, depending on the number of wounds they have. Because typically, you can have hordes just like that, and it's fine. Now, they haven't shown us the movement characteristic, and in my opinion, the movement characteristic is probably the most important characteristic on any war scroll for any unit. Because positioning and movement in this game is key. Like, this game, Age of Sigmar is won and lost in the movement phase, quite simply. So, the key stats typically go movement, then armor save, then wounds. And then bravery being kind of last in terms of what's important. So, the move is a dash, so it degrades. But that's okay. But we know that it does degrade, therefore they will, they should be competitive in terms of being able to take objectives, but then, and moving around and positioning, but that can help be mitigated simply for the fact that you can whittle them down from a range. But then the Mage-Gargants have 35 wounds. This is a huge number of wounds in Age of Sigmar. And the initial thoughts I had when I saw that this on the article was just, holy crap, 35 wounds and a 4+ save. That's huge. But my second thought immediately afterwards was, at the same time, a unit of Hearthguard Berserkers, a full unit of 20 has more wounds. Most hordes have around 30 to 40 wounds. So this is actually kind of fine, because it means that each one of these Mage-Gargants, rather than just simply being surrounded and absolutely eviscerated with like 12 wounds, like a general monster against a horde with a shit ton of low damage attacks that all deal 1 damage, but they have like a huge number of 30 bodies, all with 1 wound that you got to chew through. Here it means each Mage-Gargant is the equivalent of a single powerful horde, a single powerful elite horde in this case. So that's fine, actually. I think that's pretty good if they wanted these things to be a legitimate threat that can operate as their own particular army. Especially for the points costs that were revealed in the last General's Handbook. They actually have their points costs already printed. So we know they're all about 450 to 490 points. So I forget the exact number. I believe it was about 490. That seems really reasonable, because most hordes are going to run you between 300 to 400 or so points, and these guys should cost a little bit more, and they have the better save, and they're going to have a fair amount of damage output, so these guys might be they shouldn't be overpowered unless there's lots of things in their book that give them the options that, and the things that are going to make them overpowered are things that are going to give them high levels of ignoring damage, things that make them count as a huge amount of models for the purposes of claiming objectives, and things that increase their speed and their armor. Anything that puts them to a 3-up save, like if I see one of those relics in there, I know it's going to be bad news bears, but it won't be bad news bears like completely. I don't suspect these guys are going to ruin the game. People tend to be like, oh, book creep it happens, it's real. Like, yes, book creep is real, but Age of Sigmar is balanced in such a way that on the base system, things tend to be fairly competitive with each other to a certain extent. Things tend to either be killy or durable, and then pretty much everything dies. Even though it's durable, it just means it takes a bit longer to kill. Things die in Age of Sigmar. That's the way the game is balanced. If things aren't dying, it kind of is upsetting the balance, because units that break the game are things like Fire Slayers that hit ridiculously hard and don't die, with Hearthguard Berserkers. So it's fine. And then but that said, you get units like that, and you get the new Lumineth, who are, particularly sturdy, and they can be very killy. You get stuff like that. But then you also have to consider the other part of Age of Sigmar's balancing. It all comes from the objectives and the scenarios. And you might have an army that performs very well in some scenarios and not very good in other scenarios. Particularly the Lumineth, they kind of, depending on your list, will struggle in certain multi-objective scenarios. Particularly because they love the teamwork element. And same with Fire Slayers, where there's a limited number of objectives that you have to worry about. They're baller. But if you have to be scattered all over the board claiming objectives, and you have to deal with other armies that are highly mobile, jumping around you, that's when things start to get balanced. And that durability and attack power you have doesn't really count for much if you can't use it. So, it's not to say that these guys probably won't be particularly powerful. It's just, at the same time, Age of Sigmar is a little harder to break than 40k. So, particularly in its current format, people are always going to argue with me about that, and that's fine. You do that, but Age of Sigmar is far more balanced than 40k. At least as it stands right now, with only the first 9th edition codex starting to come in. Those 9th edition codexes, it's a story for a different time, but I'm liking how things are looking, and I want future codexes to look like that. But anyway, let's see. Moving on, we know that they have an allegiance ability that if a spell or ability would slay the model without any wounds or mortal wounds being inflicted by the spell or ability, they instead suffer d6 mortal wounds. That's fine, that makes sense. To be honest, most abilities that I can think of off the top of my head that insta-kill stuff, specifically require you to roll higher than the model's wounds characteristics, so I don't think that's physically possible outside of, maybe Nagash, one of the other gods, I can't think of too many things that do that, that are actually going to be able to do that. And then they have Timber. So, if this model is slain, before removing the model from the battlefield, the players must roll off. I never like those mechanics, but it is what it is. The winner must pick a point on the battlefield, 5 inches from this model. Each unit within 3 inches of that point suffers D3 mortal wounds unless it's a Mage-Gargant. That punishes you for killing these things, which means, depending on how they bracket, the best way for people to counter this army is probably going to just be to bracket them and then not care, which will be a viable tactic, again, so long as they don't get something that makes them count as an inordinate amount of models for the purposes of holding objectives, like the ogres do. if each one of these counts as like 20 models, yeah, you're screwed. You basically, once they get on an objective, with the killing power that they have, unless you throw everything at them, I mean, it's a good thing you can't have too many of them, but it's still gonna be a prick. Yeah. So, there's that. So, by the looks so far, it looks impressive, but it's really just up to the standard of, oh hey, these are monsters that might actually live past a single round of combat against a horde. So, there's that. Then they give us the few of the damage and weapon stats, and some of the abilities for each of the different Mage-Gargants. They give us the Kraken Eater. The Kraken Eater's, I really like the Kraken Eater. It seems like the most well-rounded of each of the Mage-Gargants so far. The Hurled Debris with a 24-inch range, 3 attacks, 4s and 3s, -1 D3. Sure, that's fine. 24-inch range, that's a really long range though. It brackets, but really long range. That's going to be good. You got to remember, because one thing to keep in mind is, sure, these things have to be strong enough if you want to run them fully as a single army. If I see one of these on a table, I'm probably not going to be too concerned, really. Particularly because in a 2,000 point army, they're like a quarter of the opponent's army. So, you know. Let's see. The Almighty Stomps. 2 attacks, 3s and 3s, -2 D3. Yep, that's fine. That seems really good. The high rend there, good, easy to wound. D3 damage. Sure, that's D3 damage is unreliable. So that's gonna be a thing. 3-inch, 2-inch range on them. The Death Grip, 1-inch, 3-inch, 1 attack, 3 up, -3 D6. If that works how I think it is, it's going to be okay. Now, we also get to see the move characteristic here on the Kraken Eater, I should point out. And we know this one's move. And movement 11, degrading down to movement 7, that's really good in terms of this thing being strong. But it's also really good in that it's not the fastest. I mean, it's going to be moving, you know, unless it's got ways to increase its movement, you know, it's got to advance on a 6. Let's see, it's going to have 17-inch move. That's fast. Probably not a first turn charge. Unless, if it's got a way to do it, it could probably deliver a first turn charge, which these things might need, depending on their defenses. So, you know, not bad. It degrades down to 7. Still respectable. So these things are still going to be somewhat mobile as the game goes on. Shipwrecker Club, 8 attacks, 3s and 3s, -2, damage 2, gets bracketed, going down to 5 attacks. That's particularly good. A real problem that a lot of monsters suffer from is just the sheer number of attacks they don't have compared to hordes. That makes up for it. And they've got a high number of rends, so I like them. I think this one is pretty good. Stuff them in your net ability that they show off here is kind of like, sure, you get to instantly slay more models. That'll ruin anyone's day if you can use it right, but it's pretty niche. Then we have the War Stomper. So, someone said to me when they first saw these that they thought the War Stomper was probably the best one of the lot. I probably have to agree. So, they have the Death Grip, they have the Jump Up and Down, which is 4 attacks instead of the 2 attacks that the Almighty Stomp has. So, you know, once again, this one's slightly slower, starting off at 10, degrading down to 6. It's got a Hurled Body rule that degrades, and it's got its Titanic Boulder Club that is +4, +3, +2, +1, 0. It has a Death Grip, Titanic Boulder Club, 3s and 3s, -2, 2 damage. So the Hurled Body is once per combat phase. You can pick one enemy model within 3 inches of this model and roll a dice. Add the Hurled Body modifier shown on this model's damage table and roll. If the roll is at least double the enemy's wound characteristic, it is slain. You can then roll another dice. On a 4+, you pick an enemy unit within 12 inches of this model invisible to it. That unit suffers a number of mortal wounds equal to the wounds characteristics of the slain model. Yeah, that's that. Sure. That's okay. In terms of you have to roll double, you have +2 by standard. It's your D6, so you're probably gonna kill most 2 wounds things, most 3 wound things. If you get a 4 up, so 50-50 chance to kill any 4 wound things. So what is 4 wounds? So cavalry, some ogres, lots of heavy hitting troops. Some of the big Ossiarch, Bone Reaper guys, the stalkers. But then you won't do it on monsters. So that's pretty good at getting rid of those. But it brackets. So, and then you get minuses to it by the time you reach your final brackets. So, the Titanic Boulder Club. Attack characteristic of the Titanic Boulder Club is equal to the number of enemy models within 3 inches of the attacking model. Add the number of Titanic Boulder Club value in the attacking model's damage table to the total, and add 4 to the total for each enemy monster within 3 inches of the attacking model. If the modified attacks characteristic of the Boulder Club is less than 1, it counts as being as 1. If the modified attacks characteristic of the Titanic Boulder is more than 10, it counts as being 10. Okay, so something I missed the first time I read that is that it caps out at 10. That changes my opinion on this thing actually quite a lot, because I considered this thing being ridiculously powerful if it didn't cap. But the fact that it caps at 10 attacks, 3s and 3s minus 2 damage, that's fine. That's, you know, a unit of 10... Jeez, no. It's a unit of 5 Hearthguard Berserkers. Sure, that's very killy, but it's fine. So... these things, they look like they have a lot of damage potential on paper, but I know from practical experience that 3+ is actually somewhat unreliable. So I suspect these guys are gonna, they look good. They look balanced in terms of what they can do. Their damage capability is a little lackluster, which I think it needs to be, because they have a lot of potential attacks. Because if they spike, they can do a lot of damage. Then we've got the... What's this one? The Gatebreaker. So the Gatebreaker has the Hurled Boulder. So it essentially fires a 4 damage cannon at a 18-inch range. It's pretty cool. It's got its almighty stomp and a death grip, just like the Kraken Eater. It's got its Fort Crusher Flail, which is 10 attacks, 4s and 3s minus 3 damage. Okay. Sounds really good, but it hits on 4-ups. So, yeah. Let's see. It's also the fastest one. So, there's that. Starting at 12 inches, going down to 8 inches. So, that's okay. Smashdown. Add 1 to the damage inflicted by each successful attack made by this model that targets a unit that is part of a garrison or wholly on or within a terrain feature. Oh, that's gonna be bad for Caradrons. Because every Caradron's boat counts as a garrison. So, yeah. Caradron players, beware of these. No one else really uses garrisons, but people who are honor within terrain features, people who use that, you know, beware. Don't try and take cover against this thing. Just run out in the open and run around it. Get under the legs, I guess. In addition, at the end of the combat phase, you can pick 1 terrain feature within 3 inches of this model and roll a dice. If the roll is equal to or greater than the smashdown value on this model's damage table, The terrain feature is reduced rubble. All its scenery rules are replaced with the deadly scenery rule, and its keywords are changed to the scenery and rubble. So, it needs a 2+ at full brackets, and it goes all the way down to a 6 up on its last bracket. So, I actually missed that first part of Smashdown the first time I read that. But the second part of Smashdown can actually be really good for controlling the battlefield, particularly against units and other armies that try to control the battlefield with their terrain. So things like the Fire Slayer's pizza oven, no point smashing that down, unless they refuse to absolutely exhaust it. Whereas at the same time, Nurgle players who are going to plant lots of trees, just smash those trees down and you start cutting down their mobility and their ability to summon. If you can get to the Khorne altar and smash that down, Khorne player is going to be really upset that he just lost his rerolls on his prayers. The Loon Shrine, no real point smashing that down. The Ironeth ones, you could smash them down if they annoy you, but no huge point in smashing them down. I mean, you always can though. If a faction has terrain that they bring, almost no point in not smashing it down. Just to say no. But there are some that's going to hurt more than others, and with this thing's fast move, it simply does it at the end of the combat phase if you're within 3 inches. So, pretty good actually, I think. Like, not a game-breaking ability, but just an interesting little utility that this guy has. I mean, if you face factions that don't use any sort of terrain or scenery, it sucks. Because it's... they've changed Man-Crusher Gargants a little bit, I think. By the looks, they're pretty much how I remember them last time I looked at them. Straight off the bat, when you look at all their profiles, I don't see anything that causes super concern. I see things that are trying to withstand and compensate for the Age of Sigmar typical weakness of monsters versus hordes, and I don't see them overcompensating. If we look at the newest article, which is the Relics, we can see the, let's see, Trappings of the Titan, the War Stomper Mage-Gargant can choose from 3 artifacts. Okay, it's a good number, especially in this book, for these things. So, Ironweld Cestus they show off. You can re-roll save rolls for attacks that target the bearer. In addition, you can re-roll save rolls. If the re-roll saved roll is an unmodified 6 and the attack was made with a melee weapon, the attacking unit suffers 1 mortal wound. So, interesting there in that the wording has to be not just unmodified save rolls, it has to be specifically a re-rolled save roll is an unmodified 6. So, that's interesting. Which means there's no point rolling a 6 when you first make your save roll. But, at the same time, a 4-up re-rolling all saves, you're going to have to bring the Ren to carve through this guy. That's pretty good. I think that one by itself is probably going to make the War Stomper probably one of the best ones. It's definitely the one, I expect to use as its name to smash through and be the main sort of fighter. So, then we've got the Gatebreaker with its Legacies of Demolition. They say here that this also has 3 artifacts. I find that pretty much the standard. King Slaughter Cow, you can re-roll wound rolls of 1 for attacks made by the bearer that target a hero. In addition, you can re-roll wound rolls for attacks made by the bearer that target a general. Yeah, okay. I think that's dumb, because having just looked at its profile with all of you, it's the classic case of, here's a good relic, but of course, in Age of Sigmar, everything also has bad relics at the same time. And this is a case of, they're showing us probably one of the worst ones that this guy has, because, quite honestly, you're gonna kill a character if you catch it with these guys. You're gonna kill them. So, this just makes that overkill. So, nothing wrong with overkill, but it's a case that I don't think these are going to be a broken army. I think they'll have their strengths. I think they'll have their weaknesses. But they should function relatively okay. The biggest concern that I originally had wasn't that they were going to be knight equivalents and be ludicrous and game-breaking and have command abilities and warlord trait and general traits and relics that just made them completely dumb and retarded, or completely overcompensating for every weakness they had. Instead, I was concerned that they were going to produce these and they were going to have rules that didn't really fix the issues that make monsters really not competitive. I'll be curious to see how many people pick these up. I'll also be curious to see how many people try to include them as allies compared to how many people try to run them as a full-on army. And then trophies of the Kraken Eater. So the Kraken Eater Mage-Gargants, natural hoarders, they have 6 relics, so that's fine. And so they show us the jaws of the Mogalodon. Sure. Nice little sharky jaws there. Once per phase, you can reroll 1 hit, 1 wound, or 1 save roll for attacks made, you cannot use the ability to reroll more than 1 dice for the bearer in the same phase. It's kind of meh. So, perfect in my opinion. The Glowy Lantern. The bearer can attempt to cast 1 spell in your hero phase, unbind 1 spell in the enemy hero phase, in the same manner as a wizard, and the bearer knows Arcane Bolt and Mystic Shield. So, if Mystic Shield was still the same as it was in the previous edition, I would throw my hands up and just say, we've got a winner here. Once they hit that 3-up save, I don't believe that... Yeah. But, that's a reroll saves rolls of 1 now. So, yeah. I'm not sure that they're particularly... None of these... Only 1 relic has particularly blown me away. Made me go, that's very competitive. And that's the War Stomper one's Admiral Cestius. In terms of their actual stats, the only one that's really blown me away has been the... well, no, they all seem really balanced with a particular purpose. I'd almost say you want 1 of each. Now, they've also shown on Facebook some mercenary named characters. So overall, having looked at all this and gone through this with everyone, to just give you guys a bit of a, this is what I think, it's quite simple. I think they're going to be particularly not too bad at this point. Taking a wait-and-see approach, their battle tome goes on pre-order this weekend, and I'm excited to see more. What I'm thinking is going to really change it up, and the difference between this faction being OP and being just sort of, well, they kind of are actually just able to not fall over and die, will be primarily, can they hold objectives? How many models do they count as for holding objectives? And what kind of crazy-ass buffs can they get from their general traits and their other relics? Right? So the things I'm looking out for specifically are things that are run and charge, things that are +1 to save, things that are 4-ups to ignore damage, things that make you count as like 10+ models for the purposes of holding objectives. Things that let you deep strike. That are the things I'm going to be looking for to go, and depending on how much they do that, that's when you might have this might be a knight situation. But, that said, again, the balance of Age of Sigmar is different, so I don't think there's any cause for alarm so far, having seen what we've been shown. I've been Jay from Jade Productions. If you want to discuss this topic any further, or you've got any questions, you want to add your 2 cents in, what you think of them, I'm really happy to hear that. Please jump into the Discord in the link, or jump in and comment in the comment section below. I'll see you next time. I've been Jay from Jade Productions.